Okay, I'll tell you a story. Well, I'm listening to a bunch of judgmental fuck you fucks. When there is not a kid in the area that wouldn't know bad words like it's nothing. But let me tell you a story. There once was a Santa Claus. So, remember that little drummer boy? That little drummer boy was playing his drums. And when that drummer boy was playing his drums, he was like, I'm poor too, Jesus. But they say you're important and you're from God. So you're important and you're from God. And I have these little drums and I'm pretty good at playing my drums. So I'm playing my poor boy drummer song. Because you're a poor boy Jesus and I'm a poor boy drummer boy. And we could be friends. And he was just a little kid. He was just the legendary little drummer boy kid. And now he's legendarily famous and important to heaven. And but until then, he was just a little drummer boy. Some little poor kid who could play the drums. Well, Jesus got crucified, resurrected, ended up in heaven. And Jesus came down to earth and said, wow, I like being the poor, nobody, nothing Jesus around somebody like you. You make me wish I had powers so I could bring you anything and help you with anything and bless you in every way. And the drummer boy says, well, I'm not a baby anymore and I work hard and I make a good living and I make my money and I do my best. And Jesus said, yeah, but I was the poor baby Jesus nothing, and you played me a song, and I had nothing to give you. So I'd like to use my powers, and I'd like to make you wealthy, just because I have powers. And I'd like to feel what it's like to be the nothing Jesus that now feels like the most wealthy, amazing, powerful Jesus ever known, because I can give you something wealthy and nice. And the little drummer boy says, all right. I mean, I'm an adult now and I'm working hard to make my living, but you go ahead and be the precious Jesus that wants to bring me my miracle. And what nobody knew is that the little drummer boy did not ever see Jesus work a miracle, literally. The little drummer boy was just a poor kid that watched the wise men give gifts to Jesus as if he was important. But he looked like a poor nothing. So this little drummer boy watched little baby Jesus that looked like just a poor kid, born as a poor kid, and watched these weird wise men giving him gifts and saying that he was important. But other than that, the drummer boy had nothing more to go on. There was no miracles. Jesus did not speak, did not use his powers. But that little drummer boy heard from the wise men that he was important and just left it at that. Played him a little song and said, I'm poor too, Jesus, you little cute important boy who's just poor like me too. And sung him a song. It was a beautiful little boy. And I don't think the Bible ever went over it, but Jesus came back after he had gone to heaven. So Jesus went to heaven for a while, came back and spoke to the little drummer boy who was, older by then. And he ended up wealthy, excessively, sickeningly powerful, unrealistic, wealthy, as if the power of God followed him like a big, huge Santa Claus cloud, and just kept making his life wealthy no matter what he did. It was like the gods made a big cloud that followed him, and that little drummer boy could not get more wealthy all the time, constantly, like it was nothing, so unrealistically wealthy, because he was so beautiful to Jesus. And there's another story. There once was a Santa Claus, and this Santa Claus was always so sick to his stomach about the problem with excessive greed and selfishness, until you would abuse the retarded when they're poor and homeless and act like you're not barbarically sickening like a serial killer and stuff. So this Santa Claus would act like an absolute nothing that just liked to pass out some silly little thing he knew how to make. So this Santa Claus would show up everywhere and make a little trinket. He would just make some weird, silly little trinket and pass it out to some poor kid or some person willing to take his little silly trinket. And it was usually like a little kazoo or a little weird thing you could put water in that would sound like a little bird making a song, the way carnivals and stuff sell those little plastic birds, and you put water in them, it sounds like they're singing a song. He'd make all these little silly trinkets that he could make with a knife, like whittling wood and making a little thing. But he'd always make sure that it was a trinket almost done. So when he would show up, he would just sit and whittle the wood in the last little corners or whatever and finish up his little gift and give it to whoever would treat him good. But he would act like he's just poor and he has nothing. So he whittles whatever wood he can get his hands on. And he creates out of whatever he can find. And he would sit as a Santa Claus and see who would treat him like sickening. You're so poor, you're such a fuck you nothing. You're such a poor fuck you nothing. You're always such the poor fuck you nothing. I can't wait to abuse everything that's poor like a fuck you nothing. Or whether they would sit and say, wow, thanks for the trinket that you made out of a piece of wood you could find. And I hope you find money and wealth and beautiful things and good things and, all the beautiful things that good people deserve. And as soon as people would talk to him with love, respect, as soon as people would wish that instead of just making little toys with a piece of wood, he could have whatever and build whatever and do whatever, their houses were always the houses that had Christmas presents around the outside of the house. It was his Santa Claus signature. He'd put Christmas presents all over the outside of the house. This is where this is like politics and religion. You could have a talk forever as to whether people would want a Santa Claus in their area. Why? Because Santa Clauses treat bad people like crap. And Santa Clauses make it overly obvious which house didn't get visited because they're such crap.